My fiance sticks up for me, and now my family, mostly my parents, want me to break up with him. Let me tell you exactly why they hate him so much. The worst harm can result from the best of intentions. This was a lesson my parents learned in a very unpleasant way. I'm a 26-year-old woman who is a mother of two lovely boys, but I currently live in my parents' house. It's not really my fault, after all. No reasonable girl my age would choose living with her parents over staying at her husband's place. My parents were in their mid-50s and they were doing quite well. They both sought independence at an early age and they were now doing pretty well despite the struggles they encountered. Dad was 20 years old when he got married to Mom, who was 2 years younger despite the fact that Mom's parents were not in support of the marriage. Dad was orphaned at a very early age, and he had no brother or sister anywhere, and his responsibility was just to protect himself and his wife. Things were tough, but they finally got to the point where they had a thriving agricultural business. Basically, they had tasted poverty and were now rich. They became stingy with their resources and suspicious of those who came around them. You might say they were simple, being wise, but they soon went extreme. They would use every opportunity to gloat about how one should seek independence from an early age, and all the manner of rubbish. The fact that something worked for you doesn't really mean it would work for someone else. If only they knew better, Dad would gloat about starting out in life at a very young age, while Mom would go about with the whole chastity talk, and how she kept herself till she had met her husband. This was a common sermon which my elder brother, my younger brother, and myself were forced to listen to when any form of opportunities presented itself. They were soon met with a huge embarrassment when my elder sister got pregnant for one of the boys who worked on my father's farm. The news went around a little in our community very fast, and there was nothing my parents could do. My sister had to give birth to her child in our parents' home, and this only brought our toxicity out of our parents. They resented my sister and her child, and my brother and I were not separated by the heat. My father continued to do the independence charge, while our mom used our elder sister as an example of the need to keep yourself till marriage. My younger brother soon got fed up with my parents and making him look like he was a burden, and he decided to leave the house and go face life on his own. Just as they've been encouraging, right? He had just turned 18 years old anyways. My father was impressed by the move made by my brother, and he readily let me live in the house, and to go face life on its own is what he wanted. He let him go empty-handed, no money to sustain himself even for a day. That was not child training, according to my estimation. That was wickedness. The fact that you suffered hardship does not necessarily mean that your son should suffer the same fate. My brother was plain naive, just like I was, and my parents were plain stupid. My brother was just out to please my parents, not minding the cost. I was amused the day he came back home looking like a beggar. He was clearly malnourished, and from the way he looked, it was certain that he's not eaten in a very long time. But the shame of coming back to my parents who had sang his praise was what kept him out for that long. I watched in disappointment as my father laughed him to scorn. This was someone who got himself in the predicament simply because he wanted to live up to my parents' expectations, and part of what he got out of it was a good laugh for his failure. My parents still pushed him to go off again on his own with the excuse that nothing good comes easy. This time around, they gave him a little bit of money, and they sent him on his merry way. Maybe in their heads, they saw themselves as toughening up their children for life, but on a scale of 1 to 10 on good parenting, they scored a 0. My parents never for once bothered to ask my brother what plans he had for his life. They just sent him off. My brother moved in with his girlfriend and soon joined the wrong company. That's how he cut himself off from the family. That was how my parents cut him off from the family completely. The last time that I've heard about him, his girlfriend was pregnant. I was the only child of my parents who have not gotten in the family way, but things were going to change soon. I met a guy while running an errand for my mom. His name was Charles. I was 22 years at the time, and he was the first guy to ask me out despite the fact he knew my parents and what they stood for. I and Charles bonded over time, and we soon began speaking behind my parents' back to make love on the farm. I loved Charles with everything in me, maybe because, well, he was my first. You could call it teenage exuberance or naivety, and you'd be right, but it felt like love at the time. He was the one who was bold enough to tell me that I needed to get a grip of my own life and not spend my brief moments on this planet living for my parents. He was right, though. I practically lived for my parents. I did everything required of me without asking questions, except staying away from boys. Charles. My parents had tightened their grip on me ever since their first daughter embarrassed them. They tried to keep watch of me every move, but I always found a means to meet my lover. Our love always found a way. After listening to Charles, I decided it was time to get independence from my parents, as they called it. I was certain they would praise me just as they did my brother and possibly give me some funds which I could use to start up my life. I informed them that I wanted to leave home to stay on my own. I was expecting to be praised like my junior brother, but my parents outrightly rejected the idea without giving me a reason. They actually said that I was simply looking for freedom to be promiscuous. My younger brother had left the house when he was 18 years old, and everyone applauded his move. When I decided to leave, I was termed promiscuous. I was in love, and so I was not going to be put aside easily. I persisted that they let me go, but my persistence only made them reason, but there was someone behind the scenes encouraging me to act the way I was acting. They never had any reason to tell me no twice on any matter. Once was enough because I was like a zombie when it came to keeping their instructions. While the issue lingered, they carefully watched me to know the cause of my sudden change in behavior. They soon discovered who my secret lover was, and they demanded I stop seeing Charles at once. They claimed that he was not the right person for me, but this was the only person for me, and it was going to be difficult to leave him. I questioned my parents' motive in not wanting me to be with Charles. I was of marriageable age. She had always advocated at an early start to life. Why they still kicked against our relationship, I could not really understand. My father claimed their decision did not stem from the fact that Charles was an ordinary farm boy who only wanted to take advantage of me. He noted that if Charles was serious about me, then he should come and seek for my hand in marriage the proper way. I was elated by my parents' decision to let me have my way for the first time in my life. At least if we got married, Charles and I would no longer need to be hiding around. I couldn't wait to tell my lover the good news. So, I met with Charles a few days later to tell him about the recent development, but rather than react happily, he seemed not too moved by it at all. He told me that he was no longer interested, that it was over between us. I couldn't make sense of the whole thing. We seemed so much in love to be breaking up too soon. I cried back home. For a girl who had just had her first heartache, you could tell it was really painful. I cried my eyes out for days. The only guy I had given my body and heart to now broke up with me, and when we were about to get the legal approval of my parents, my mother consoled me and encouraged me to move on with life. My elder sister was kept pointing accusing fingers at my parents for being responsible for my current bitter experience. Yeah. Well, a few months down the line, my parents introduced me to a guy named Kennedy, who was supposedly going to be my husband. I thought they arranged the marriage to help me heal from the wound I was nursing in my heart, but I would later discover that there was an agenda behind their actions. Kennedy was from a wealthy family, big-time home, and his parents made their wealth from agriculture. It was an arranged marriage by my parents, and I thought I still don't know what the bargain actually was. I'm certain of the fact it was beneficial to the parents of both parties involved. Kennedy was a fine young man in his late 20s, but I had no interest in him. I was still aching over Charles's breakup with me for no reason. Even though I never had any actual interest in Kennedy, I had to obey my parents as I always did. This is something I would never advise anyone to do. Never get into a marriage based off someone's opinions. Kennedy and I got married, but we were distant. He apparently had no interest in me too. We lived like neighbors in the same room and only had sex because it was expected of married couples to make babies. There was no intimacy between us. Everything was kind of just mechanical. It was like there was a program laid down for how each day would go. I would make his food, do his laundry, and whenever he wanted to have sex, which I never initiate, I just lay down like a log of wood, waiting for him to be done with the whole process, which was just unpleasant. I was in a marriage which my parents had forced me into, and even though I did not lack the material things needed for a comfortable home, I was starved of intimacy and affection, which is every girl's needs. And there was nothing that I could do about it. I could not find satisfaction outside my marriage for the fear of being caught, and so I was just stuck there. I thought it was bad enough, but things were soon going to get a lot worse. Kennedy, well, he began making demands of me in the bedroom, and that was when I began suspecting. He was gay. His attitude towards me turned really sour when I would not engage in certain sexual acts and some other things which I was not comfortable with. He became hostile and would pick offense at something so minuscule that could be ignored just so that he could use it as an avenue to beat me. His hostility towards me did not wane when I got pregnant with our twin boys. I knew I needed to get out before I lost my life in a marriage that was never meant to be. I've heard tales of wives being beaten to death by their husband over just little tiny issues, and I did not want to be placed on that list. Not at all. I reached out to my parents as there was no one else I could turn to for help, but all my father could do was tell me that every marriage has got their times of turmoil. I was not quitting my home because I had a little misunderstanding with my husband. He opinioned that I remained in my home and, quote, weather the storm. Otherwise, some of the other women among the host of women envying my position would just take my place. That was how much I meant to him. By weathering the storm, my father meant I should take the beatings, engage in unhealthy practices, and turn a blind eye to the fact that my husband had little interest in women. I tried enduring what nobody should, but it was just too much. I returned back to my parents' house to stay till I had a safely given birth because judging by the degree of my husband's hostility towards me, I knew it would be a miracle if I and my twin children came out unhurt, but my father was insistent that I return to my husband's house. It remained a mystery to me why my father would want me to put in harm's way. It was suspicious. I determined to get answers, but nonetheless, I returned to my husband's house where I gave birth to 2 beautiful girls. I began putting pieces together after a male staff who had previously worked at the house filed a lawsuit against my husband, accusing him of sexual harassment. That was when the whole picture became clear. Kennedy's parents knew about their only son's disinterest in women, and so they needed to get him married so he could at least produce a seed that would ensure the continuation of their bloodline. It was clear to them that they could not just randomly pick a lady from him. Sooner or later, she was bound to learn the truth about their son and make it public. They needed someone, or a family, who they could enter into a profitable partnership with. My parents were the perfect ones. They needed, really badly, the business relationship of Kennedy's parents to help grow their business further, and in turn I would be offered to their son like a sheep. The lawsuit filed against my husband by the ex-staff lacked evidence to support the claim. It was the ex-staff's words against that of my husband. I thought about what would happen should another witness testify against my husband. Worse still, what would happen if the witness was his wife? This was my window of opportunity I needed. I was going to blackmail my husband and my in-laws to let me go for good, otherwise I would testify the truth, which they knew all too well. And well, I would not even need evidence. Being the wife of the accused will tip the odds against my husband, and that was the fact his parents knew for sure. Maybe that was what I should have done for free as payment for the ill treatment out of me ever since I got married to him. I informed my in-laws of my desire to leave the house and break all forms of ties with their son, but as expected, they flared up. It took my threat to stand as a witness against their son to get them to dance to my tune. They had no option than to oblige, but that was not all. I demanded that they settle me handsomely with enough money to start my own life on my own terms, and they were to send me monthly money stipends sufficient enough to cater for what needs of the children. I was given enough money to establish a relocation in a different city where I set up a little retail business. I don't really know how my departure affected my in-laws' relationship with my parents and their business, and frankly, I could care less. I've lived my life for them for so long, and the only thing I got for it was nothing. Just like my brother, whose whereabouts did not know. I cut myself off from my parents for life. As touching my kids, I know someday they would ask questions about their roots, and I would have to face the past that I've been running from. But until that day comes, I'll keep on doing my best to give them the best my parents never gave me. I sometimes wonder what my life would have turned out if I ended up marrying Charles. Well, guys, I'm just glad OP could get away from the toxicity in her life and is now on her own with her beautiful kid. Guys, let me know exactly what you would have done if you were in this exact same position and your family basically tried to sell you off to a guy to further their goals of making more money. We're going to look at the second and final story now. Girlfriend, 24 female, refuses to renegotiate our living expenses because she doesn't trust me with money. Guys, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're new here, and let's jump into story 2. My girlfriend and I have been together for 4 years and moved in together after we both got jobs upon graduating from college. At the time, 2 years ago, we both got about the same wages, about $50K a year, so we agreed that we would split our shared living expenses. Food, utilities, rent, pet expenses, 50-50, which was fine. I was still fine to pay for the date stuff like going out to dinner or to an event, something that was more spontaneous. But our general stuff, what we need to live, would be split. Then a year ago, I got a raise at my job, so now I was making about $62,000 a year. We agreed that since I was now making a little more, it was fair for me to pay a little more in our living expenses, so we changed it to a 55-45 system. I didn't really have any problem with this, to be honest. After doing this system for a while, my girlfriend got a new job about a month ago. Well, her new salary is $85,000 a year. Way more than what it was before and way more than what I make. I was happy for her and everything, well, obviously. But about a week into her new job, I asked if we can renegotiate the splitting of our expenses, since now she was making substantially more than me. She kinda dismissed me at the time and was like, "Oh, we can talk about this later. I'm all stressed out and adjusting to the new job and need time to relax before we figure this out." I said that's fine, and figured I would bring it up again later. Another week or two went by, and I brought it up again, and she dismissed me again, saying she didn't want to deal with that right now. Last night, I decided to bring it up again since it's been a whole month, and figured we should settle the issue since I'm still paying more than her, even though she makes a lot more. I sat down with her and said that we should talk about it, and she immediately got defensive and kind of snotty. I said that I was happy to pay a little extra when I got a boost of income, so that's only fair for her to do the same since she's now making a lot more. I know that we both make enough and that we're not going to go broke if the other doesn't pay the fair share, but I still think it's important to me that we are contributing what we are able to contribute to our combined well-being. She then said that she should not be penalized for making more money by earning her new job, and I'm being greedy by trying to get out of paying my fair share of things. Her argument was that I should be happy that she got her a new job, but supposedly the only reason that I'm acting happy is because it's given an opportunity for me to get money out of her. She then told me that I'm untrustworthy with money due to history of bad decisions with it. The story here is that when I was 19 years old and had my first job during the summer, I made a solid amount of money and proceeded to blow it all on some stocks. Well, they didn't play out well, so I lost $3,000. It was dumb. I regret it, but I was 19 years old and have never had any money before, and now I know better. So for her to use something that happened years ago when I was basically still a dumb teenager, and throwing that in my face as a reason that I'm untrustworthy with money is kind of offensive. She argued that if I use more of my income on living expenses, I'll have less opportunity to throw it away on stupid things like stocks, or things we don't need. So she's protecting me by making sure I don't have as much money. I tried to argue that I'm responsible now and would never waste money to that extent, and she's just being unreasonable. But she was not having any of it and refused to change the terms of our finances. Is there anything I can do here to change her mind on this matter? Anyways, I can convince her, either directly or indirectly, that we need to divide our finances up more fairly. I'm not exactly poor, but it feels like crap knowing that I'm paying way more than I should on living expenses. I saw a lot of red flags from OP's wife. Let's just read this comment though. She's bullcrapping you, bro. She just wants to keep more of her salary for herself. If you've always adjusted based on percentage of income, then it's wildly unfair for you to be paying more whilst earning less. Basically, she was happy with the system when she benefited, but clearly doesn't want to contribute her fair share now. Now that she has the higher income, it's selfish, it's unfair, and her logic is just, well, demeaning. She's not your parent, and even if you did want to blow your excess money on stupid stuff, that's your prerogative. Sorry, guys. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think of that comment. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one. Oh yeah, guys, I have this special red jacket on today. Let me know if you would be interested in this. It has the cool Mr. Redditor logo on the back, so drop a comment down below if this is something that would interest you. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you in the next one.